Hey guys, it's Melissa here from melissaoatman.com. Welcome to Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness, a daily podcast devoted to spirituality and self-help. If you're new, I want to welcome you. If you're returning, welcome back. So today we have with us a very special guest. I have Mr. Mike Collins. He founded the sugaraddiction.com and also hosts the Quit Sugar Summit. And I am very interested to talk to him today. And if you are one of those people who feels like they've been on the diet roller coaster and has always had trouble with addictions to sugar, you're going to want to listen today. So, welcome, Mike. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks for having me. I'm honored. It's great.
So, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and then what it is that you do and how you help people?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, I don't want to go too far back, but, I thought I grew up as a regular kid. I had sugar. My mother loved sugar. She was kind of a sad story, really. My grandmother died when she was only 8 years old, and they owned the store across the way, the country store. And anytime my mom went in there, they would just give her the whatever candy they wanted free. And it was a great thing to do for an 8-year-old who lost her mom, but the science wasn't there then. It kind of basically set her up for a life where she really believed sugar was love. We grew up that way. We had unfettered access to the sugar bowl. We could put as much sugar as we wanted on our Cheerios or cornflakes, and we'd be scraping off half an inch of sugar at the bottom with the milk. It was wild. Anyway, fast forward, and I want you to remember that I didn't realize that was changing my state. I didn't realize it changed how I felt. It was basically get me jacked up like you see kids at a birthday party or whatever. There's a great video on YouTube. Eric Clapton, the great guitarist, is sitting down with 60 Minutes, and he talks about changing his state with bread and butter and sugar sandwiches. And when he was 5 and 6 years old, and because the interviewer asked him, Ed Bradley says, "So Eric, this started with heroin, this addiction thing." And he said, "No, Ed, it started with sugar." And there's a lot of very famous treatment centers now that believe sugar is the gateway drug to other drugs. And when you go into treatment there, you're not allowed to have sugar or nicotine or caffeine. So they help you, get through those addictions as well. But they're really there for drugs and alcohol. So anyway, fast forward about 14 or 15, I realized that, sugar was, I ran into beer, right? And I knew beer changed my state, and I could talk to girls. I was kind of shy, whatever. And so that party lasted till I was 28. It's another podcast, I'm sure, but I got sober at 28. And at that point, I just literally went right back to sugar. I didn't use that much sugar when I was partying, drinking and whatever. And a lot of my friends in recovery did the same thing. Forget about the freshman 15, they gained 50 pounds, the freshman 50. Anyway, I, at the time, talked my wife into having children with no sugar, no flour, no caffeine in the womb until they were 6 years old. And it's a long story, and they didn't have it in the house their whole childhood, but we did allow it in outside birthday parties. And I think I saw on your website, you have twins. They were twins. And so I have twin boys as well. And they grew up with no sugar. And I really believe that their brain developed better. They're like rocket scientists, smart. That first 1,000 days is so important. Anyway, they always said I should write a book about sugar. And I did finally, and bought the name and the website sugaraddiction.com about 10 or 12 years ago. And I gave out the best information on the internet. It was really like cutting edge information. I had been researching all the time, and I still did it. But I never really got any traction until I started having these support groups online and coaching people through one-on-one. And so that's where we are today. We have that summit that you mentioned, the Quit Sugar Summit, every year. And sugaraddiction.com has grown to be a pretty good sized community of people, because you're a little bit isolated in this, because ethically, morally, legally, you can give this product to a 1-year-old. But I always tell folks, look, just spend 5 minutes in my inbox, 5 minutes on my instant messenger. You'll see the pain out there. I got started in the early days of recovery working with late stage food addicts, people that were 100, 200 pounds overweight. They're losing limbs, going blind, and they still couldn't quit sugar. And so that addiction looked as bad. And a strange thing happened when my parents died. I went public with my substance use disorder. And I started to get this flood of people who were also sober from drugs and alcohol and that kind of stuff, but they couldn't put down the sugar. And to a man, to a woman, every single one of them has said, who's finally beat the sugar, that quitting sugar was harder than their original drugs and alcohol habit. So that's like the short podcast version, brings us up to today, and probably brings up more questions than it answers. But that's kind of the short podcast version of how I ended up here.
That's really interesting, though, and I think it's fascinating that you compare the addictions there, that a lot of people go to sugar after trying to detox from other things.
Mm.
What effects does sugar really have on the body? What are the main effects that you're seeing? Because you said that it changes you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the our work focuses on, and just so your listeners know, that the sugar molecule is half glucose and half fructose, and fructose is really the offending molecule. And very little science existed on fructose, except the last 5 years it's just exploded. Fructose malabsorption, fructose intolerance has been around for a while, but it's very hard to diagnose, and people don't really pay much attention to it. There are actual maladies in the DSM, the diagnostic manual, but everybody focuses on the glucose because we know that too much glucose jacks your blood sugar numbers, and you end up with blood sugar dysregulation, diabetes, Alzheimer's. They're calling diabetes 3. All kind of heart problems, and I mean allergies, autoimmune stuff. Everybody knows about the too much sugar, right? Too much, especially the diabetes stuff. But what is little known, and why what we do is so much different than, say, a health coach or a keto coach or a vegetarian coach or a weight loss coach, who's giving out pills and saying exercise is the answer, is that sugar, the fructose part of the molecule, and this has been exploding in the last 5 years, literally affects the dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA, even your adrenal glands. And we're drilling these deep neural pathways in our brain where, when I talked about Eric Clapton and I talked about myself, changing my state, what happens is as we grow, now there's a very common construct in the world of alcohol and drug use, is that if anyone in recovery can tell you this, or a treatment center, that if you started using drugs and alcohol when you were 14 or 15 years old, you stopped growing emotionally. Your finances, your relationships, your responsibility, your job, your schoolwork all reflects that you're not making decisions based on a responsible adult. You stop growing emotionally. Well, when you talk to someone who's lost 200 or 300 pounds, who's fallen to a right-sized body, they don't talk about the food. They talk about that same emotional recovery process. And if you think about the ability to give this product to a baby, what has happened in society in general in the last 300 years is that we have abdicated our emotional responsibility to a substance. And when you're hurting, your mom gives you a cookie. When you're sad, when you're mad, when you're angry. I mean, heck, when was the last time you saw a movie where a woman got dumped by her boyfriend and didn't have an ice cream party, right? I mean, this is a cultural norm that sugar helps you assuage these feelings. So if you put the two together, which we have at sugaraddiction.com, we have put the two together. Basically, we're a peer recovery group focusing on what the people who have recovered from late stage food addiction are doing. And we're bringing it over to what we call harmful users, meaning people who are, they may or may not be addicts, but they've just used so much sugar to help them manage their feelings that this is what they think now is life. They think the migraines, they think the mood swings, they think the hurting. People always say arm or fingers and hands and knees. They think this rheumatoid arthritis stuff has something to do with aging or their genetics, when in reality, 90% of rheumatoid arthritis goes into remission when people quit sugar. It's really kind of, it's what I call pattern recognition. It happens over and over and over again. I've seen it 1,000 times or more, up close and personal, what happens. And so this is the message we're trying to get out there. It's a little bit different than you quit the white stuff and start exercising, you're reducing calories. It really is, you're trying to reimagine, recreate, regroove new neural pathways in your brain and your dopamine receptors. In science, the dopamine receptors it's called down-regulated. They're actually thinned out. You have less of them. And what happens is you really just can't feel good anymore. Dopamine is what you need to get new food, sex, to recreate the species. And it evolved over 10 million years. And here we are playing with these beautiful brain chemicals of ours with the substance. Now, look, you take a little heroin, you take a little alcohol, you take a little cocaine, whatever, but we are pounding 21 teaspoons a day through our system. And that's average. I mean, a Coke has 12 teaspoons of sugar. So anybody with any kind of habit is up near 30 or 40 teaspoons of sugar a day. And basically the dose makes the poison. And the way that I like to keep reiterating is it's only been the last 5 years that we've understood that our brain chemical reward systems are stimulated and manipulated by this. And on the other side of the fence, we've got food companies who literally slide people into SRIs or MRIs to show that, to see how the brain chemicals light up, just like the heroin and alcohol. All right, I'll get off my soapbox, but you see what I'm talking about. It's really I don't have a meat is murder. I don't have a, friends don't let friends drive drunk. The reason I like podcasts like this is I can set this whole thing up. And if it's something that resonates with people in their life so that they've seen this in their own life where they've tried to quit, right? The research, right? 95% of people who try to quit sugar or try to quit white stuff or try to diet, lose the weight and then gain it all back plus some in the first year. And the reason that is because all diets say to reduce the white stuff. And then they just don't deal with what I've been describing with this emotional management system. They don't change that to make it, instead of use sugar, go for a walk or go to yoga or get a hug or make love or something like that. They don't change the process so that in the back of their mind, when they get a financial problem or a relationship problem or work problem, they fall back to the old management system. And it sets itself up like a craving, like a heroin craving is different than an alcohol craving, than a cocaine craving. Our food craving, literally, we share the delivery system with our stomach, with our throat, with our mouth. And so the body will set up these cravings. And once I can get you past the cravings, then you can, and I hate to say this, I really do, I don't like to talk this way, but people's brains, and this is what I learned from people later after they've got 90 days of 100% abstinence, is their really brains are not in a position to make these decisions, to make conscious, good decisions about putting this stuff in their mouth. So anyway, I could talk with it forever, but I just, I wanted to answer your question in depth, like what is it doing to us? And, I really would love any time to spend the rest of it just talking about the solution, because I do a little scaring. I try to at least impart what I know about from working with thousands of people, what they tell me when they get better,
So I want to bring up one point, and then I would love for you to tell people how you work with people and help them to get past this. But someone said something to me recently that I thought was interesting. My mom is currently undergoing treatment for cancer.
Mm.
And the nurse that came to take care of her after she had her surgery told her, you know, you need to stay away from sugar because been a lot of studies that have suggested that cancer and sugar are related. Now, have you found anything like that in doing the research that you've done?
Yeah, so one of the guys that we had on the summit, his name is Lewis Cantley, Dr. Lewis Cantley from Cornell University. And it's not like just from Cornell University. They have a Cantley lab at Cornell University. It's named after the man. And so when I interviewed him a couple times, I said, you know, this is a controversial subject that sugar causes cancer, right? And he said, I know. And I said, so does sugar cause cancer? And he said, Michael, sugar causes cancer. And I said, or feeds it at the very least. He said, it feeds it. And I said, can I get a soundbite? He's like, say that one more time. He said, Michael, sugar causes cancer. And this is a man who's not really an addict or anything, but he hasn't had sugar in 40 years or something because he's like 70. He's been studying this in kind of anonymity for a long time. And so, yeah, there are a lot of studies that tumor growth does accelerate with a lot of sugar and will reduce without sugar, you know. So you know, again, no one's going to be able to tell diagnostically for another 50 years. You know, we don't have the tools, but all the studies are pointing in that direction. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I'm so glad you're able to share that with us because when I heard that, I thought, oh my gosh, you know, it makes sense. It really does.
Yeah.
And so, for those of you who are listening, I mean, if you needed a reason to kick the sugar habit, that is definitely a very powerful one.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, in watching my mom going through chemo and all of the things that she's had to endure, is not fun to have to
No.
treat that. So, and also just diabetes too in general and other
Yeah.
health issues that you were describing, because I've had family members who lost limbs and also
Mm.
had strokes and had blindness in one eye due to the
Yeah.
sugar. I know it was the sugar. So how, if you have someone out there who's listening, and I know I have listeners who struggle with this because they've reached out to me before, and I've always said I think that there is an emotional component to this that
Mm.
just like what you were describing, I've said before, when you're sick, what do people do? They go get you a shake or they
Mm.
get you pudding and they make you your favorite treat that's usually sugar and full of sugar. So we associate feeling better with the sugar, and there is actually a chemical reaction in the brain to when we have sugar. So how do you help people move past all of that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's a very enlightened question in that, you know, most people, when they come to me, they want a food plan and an exercise plan. And I say, I'm not a gym and I don't run a diet on the side. You know, we're kind of agnostic when it comes to diet. I mean, you have to eat whole food, and it could be vegetarian, it could be keto, it could be paleo. It doesn't matter really, as long as you're not. I call it powder addiction. I said anything that's ever been reduced to a white powder, the body's just not used to the surface area that it requires to, you know, to digest it. It just hits the bloodstream really fast, and it's usually not good for you. And it usually has no minerals, no nutrients, no vitamins, no nothing. It's just a drug at that point when it's a powder, and that's all powders, you know. But you know, we don't need to get into that. But the emotional part of the process is exactly what I've described. When people grow up with their mother treating them like, doesn't, instead of getting down and getting a hug and saying, what's wrong, dear, when they're crying, they'll give you a cookie and point you towards the TV, you know. And we learn this, that because it's almost free, you can basically score sugar anywhere without any cost. Even if you don't have any money, you can usually get a little sugar somewhere, you know, whether you're drinking a soda or you're drinking, you know, getting whatever in a 7-Eleven, you can get whatever you need to get you through to the next day. And because of this ubiquitousness, because of this stuff that's just everywhere at a very low cost and societally accepted, so, you know, like I said, no ramifications, morally, ethically, legal for children to have it. We ended up growing up with this emotional management system that relies on a substance. And until that one paradigm is not broken, but shattered, smashed in two, and people listen to the people who have had success. I have people that are ex Weight Watchers leaders. I've had every single diet that you can absolutely think of. We've had people try. The average is 6.8, but the average person, the real kind of folks are way above 10. I think there's a lot of underreporting of the dieting. But there's like 10, 12, 15 diets that they've been on, from South Beach to Atkins and everything in between. The grapefruit diet and this, the something cauliflower soup. I mean, this is crazy stuff that they've always tried, but they've never accepted the idea that the possibility exists that this product could be powerful enough to change their mental state. And also, the stigma around addiction still exists, both for people trying to get off opiates, alcohol, or whatever. And forget about the idea that you could be a food addict or you could be addicted to sugar. They just don't, if you know the comedian Rodney Dangerfield, he says, I get no respect, right? Sugar gets no respect as a psychoactive drug, a drug of addiction, because the dose makes the poison, right? I mean, we're looking at, like I said, 20, 30 teaspoons a day. That's before the flour. Now, remember, flour turns to sugar in your stomach. So that's a big glucose hit. The sugar is actually a glucose and a fructose hit, right? So you're getting both. But really, you're looking for that, when you ingest the flour products, it kind of jacks your blood sugar, and like Pavlov's dogs, it starts you thinking about the rest of the stuff, which is usually paired, like a donut or, whatever, something that's paired together, flour and sugar. And so the dopamine, the serotonin. And the one thing that I try, and really the way that I delineate this is I say, look, you are not looking for a craving for a sweet product. Yes, nothing in nature that has fructose in us that's sweet is poisonous. Mother's milk is sweet. We are attracted to sweet things, but we are only attracted to sweet things in such a tiny, like we used to eat those little blueberries that are not even that good, the wild ones, or the little crab apples, but we never had this multitude of fruit and orange juice and dried fruit. We never had all this fructose. So what you're looking for when you have those cravings is you need to say to yourself, I'm not looking for sweets. I'm looking for a dopamine hit. Now, I know it sounds kind of clinical or whatever, but you got to realize that if you're looking for a dopamine hit, you can get a dopamine hit doing other things. You can go out and take a walk. You can go out, and if you take a big glass of water and you go for a walk and walk the dog or get a hug or watch a sunset, you would get a little bit of dopamine, and you'll be hydrated, and the cravings will pass. It's not like they're like this omnipresent thing. They will pass. And so when that happens, you've kind of successfully done step one of reordering the way you handle with and deal with emotions, right? And that's the key message of our work, the key message of how we change people's behavior. It's very slow. And if you don't institute in the first 30, 60, or 90 days, then we call it white knuckling. You're like gritting and bearing. You're just you're okay. I'm not going to have sugar. Not going to have sugar. But if you don't actively move into another process when you have the cravings, realizing that you're not just having cravings for that sweet product, you're actually having cravings to get. And dopamine is like, it's everything. It's the reason we're still here, because we get some when we get new food. We get some when we have sex. I mean, it was really evolved to reward us for these behaviors, and now that system's been hijacked. So again, I like to have podcasts because I can lay the whole, I don't want to call it an argument, the whole case out, so that people can kind of understand the difference between a diet and what we do.
Well, I love that you mentioned that, because diets, you think of that, that's short term. That's just something
Yeah.
you do to get a temporary, result that someone wants to get quickly. But what you're talking about is actually changing habits.
Mm-hmm.
And it does take time to change a habit, but when you do that, studies have shown that that has a much longer lasting effect. And
Yep.
I love that you talk about this because really what you're talking about is giving them coping mechanisms
Mm.
for dealing with the emotional pain, really, that they're, because you're talking about getting dopamine, but really, when we usually have those kinds of cravings, it's because we're experiencing some kind of emotional down, usually, whether it's a
100%.
breakup or
100%.
stressful day. Because I know when people talk to me, they say, well, when I get stressed out, I get a candy bar. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is we're trying to figure out how to cope with what we're dealing with. And instead
Mm-hmm.
of doing it in a healthy way, we reach for the sugar or the foods that are bad for us. And I don't think a lot of people even pay attention to the fact that flour and things like that turn into sugar. So there are people out there who might think I don't eat a lot of sugar, but then they're eating breads and everything like that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of doing the same thing. So I really love that you're educating us on that because I think a lot of people don't realize that.
No, it's absolutely true. And you're right. It's like when I start to, I mean, I've had some real, I mean, I've had we have MDs in our program that are our coaches now, therapists, registered dietitians, people who have, they should know this stuff, but they've never been taught it. And it only kind of evolved through the 12-step in dusty church basements anecdotally. But now the science is here to back that up because it really is affecting their brain reward systems. And in this management of their, you hit it really right on the head in that I'm a real big fan of this. It's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And basically, it doesn't need to be sexual trauma or physical trauma, but a lot of times we find that people have been tamping down the feelings of some sort of trauma. And when they get off the sugar, then they have to deal with that. It becomes real and it flows up through the body as a painful experience, a memory or whatever. And then, like you said, you literally have to think about today. You have to think about today's stressors, finances, COVID, everything that's going on. You're not dealing with it with a candy bar. You've got to have a new system. And so once you get that part of it and you journal, a lot of times when people use a journal and they write it out and they say, well, I had this and it was a terrible day. And then I had, I finally had the candy bar, whatever. They can look back in black and white and they can see the pattern. There it is. Oh my goodness. I was fine over the weekend. Nobody's bothering me. And then Monday when work started, by 4 o'clock, I needed a candy bar. So, you know what I mean? It's like you start to see your own behavior in black and white and you start to match it up with your emotional life, the one that's really causing the craving.
I think another important thing to consider too is we are kind of set up for failure sometimes in the situations we're put in because when you were talking, immediately thought about my workplace where the supervisors want to reward you for doing a good job. So they stick a candy bar in your mailbox, or they'll say, we have a treat for you today. And it's always food. It's like, we got food or we have a cookie for you because, I'm a teacher. And so they said, oh, you've been working so hard with COVID and having to do so much more work. So here's a cookie. We got everybody a cookie from the local bakery. And I'm one of those people that I hate that because I don't want to seem like I'm not grateful that you got me a donut or you got me a cookie, but I'm also one of those people who tries to watch what I eat and I don't want to take in a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
So I always want to refuse the cookie, but then that makes us look like, oh, I'm not grateful that you bought me this cookie for doing a great job. Like, can we start rewarding people not with food?
Well, again, as the kids say, woke about this because there's a guy, he's a dentist in Great Britain who I interviewed a couple times now on the summit. His name's James Galunick, and he has a project called the Rewards Project. And the main premise in a book and everything, and it's a nonprofit, it's not making any money from it, that the whole premise is to stop rewarding children with candy and cookies and sugar. And there's 100 other things that you can use that, that kids would like more probably. And it's just this pattern that's developed. And it, like you say, it develops right into adulthood. It's a gift, like as we record this, Valentine's Day is coming up. I mean, how did every single holiday develop into this, Easter Bunny and Christmas? I mean, Thanksgiving, all of them, Halloween, everyone is somehow focused on the sugar of the event kind of thing. And it's just crazy making. And here's the thing that I like. I forgot to tell you that when I got sober, I read a book called Sugar Blues. And what I was attracted to was the story of the British Empire's growth in the years between 1600 and 1800, 1900, right? And basically what happened was they went to the west of Africa, picked up slaves and empty boats, went to the Caribbean and in the Americas, and picked up sugar, molasses, rum, coffee, and tea. And over 150 years, they grew a monopoly and a cartel that El Chapo would have been proud of, that literally took over the world on the money that they made. And the average person in Great Britain went from 5 pounds a year to 100 pounds a year in less than 150 years. Right now, that figure is now 150 in the United States, pounds per 150 pounds of sugar pushing through our body. So think of those 5-pound bags you get, and then think of like whatever, I don't know how many that is, but a lot, 20, 30 of those bags you got to push through your body every year, right? And so the cultural norms, no one is even alive that knows a world where this product, it's been however many generations over since the 1600s, where when in Great Britain, when this first started, there were a lot of doctors who lived to be 70 or 80 years old and watched an entire couple, 2-3 generations go through in that process, and just were writing about the caffeine and the sugar and all that kind of stuff, and how much change it was doing in people, how many diseases were coming, the psychological effects of it. And there's a lot of writings about that, but there's no one alive now that can remember a world that didn't have it. I mean, if you look at the 1980s, I'm probably dating myself, but anywhere before that, like in high school or middle school or anything, there was only 1 or 2 obese people, right? Kids. And forget about the same thing with adults. And if you look at movies of the 40s, 50s, 60s, same thing. And you can track the high fructose corn syrup going into the diet in the 80s to right now to the 1920 or the 2020s. And literally the obesity numbers go up right with the amount of high fructose corn syrup in the diet. And so it's just, a phenomena, historical phenomenon. It's basically what was the phrase? A evolutionary U-turn or evolutionary fork in the road that we took the wrong road. Yeah. And we have to correct. We really do.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think that you can also probably attribute to marketing.
Oh, yeah.
For the increase in that too, seeing the commercials, of course, I see this commercial for this thing and now I have to have it and I want it. And so a lot of that goes hand in hand, I think, too. Very interesting point. And when you look at other nations and compare, you see very different things, especially when you look at how they view sugar.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you look at the developing nations, when we started to outsource all our products to, the same thing happened to them. Before that marketing hit there, their disease rates were quite a bit lower. It's very common, very common.
That is really interesting. I actually, when I was teaching, we read an article about Germany and how at one time the Germans used to shop every couple of days and the refrigerators are small. And so they would only buy what they needed and then go to the store every few days. And that is actually starting to change in Germany. And more products are ready to make. So more frozen products, more, salads that are pre-made. And the article was talking about actually recycling, and that the recycling waste has gone up because they're buying things that are pre-packaged. But it was also talking about how a lot of Germans now don't read the packages to see like the calories that are in the things they're buying, and
Mm.
that the pre-packaged things, they're not as healthy. So there actually is an increase in the amount of fat that the Germans are consuming. And so the weight of the Germans has increased
Oh
over
yeah, I
the last
believe it.
couple of years. And it's, again, I think a lot, we all fall into that trap. If we don't read what we're putting into our bodies, we get hidden sugar, I think, a lot
Oh
from
yeah.
products.
Oh yeah, 85% of the stuff on the shelf has sugar in it. And this is up from real low numbers. And so, we ask folks, do not eat from bags, boxes, cans. I mean, there have these quote unquote rules where if it's less than the third or fourth ingredient, it's okay. That's crazy talk. That doesn't mean a thing. You can keep those cravings alive no matter how much you're ingesting. I ask folks to do a simple scratch test. I mean, and if you were to go to allergists, they'd scratch you for dust and ragweed and pollen and all this other stuff. And they would see if you have an effect, it gives you an inflammation mark where the scratch mark was. Well, our scratch test is very simple. Just give me 30, 60, or 90 days with 100% abstinence from these products. If I can get somebody to 90 days with no sugar, no flour, no caffeine, usually, not necessarily always, but no flour, no sugar, they never want to go back. Now, they sometimes slip, they'll whatever, but they always come back because we have effectively screwed up their use, because their skin is better, they've lost weight. They're one of the, if not the, I think it actually is the biggest benefit that people talk about is the clearing of the brain fog. I mean, where your brain literally, you can process faster, you can focus longer. ADD and OCD kind of, not that they go away completely, but they kind of abate a little bit. I don't know if you ever heard of this guy, Dr. Daniel Amen. He's been on public television a lot. And he's done hundreds of thousands of brain scans where he puts a little colored thing in there and scans what your brain looks like. And when people come to him with a standard American diet, the brain literally has holes in it, holes like not like bumps, but holes. And then when they get on a whole food diet and they stay on it for a year or so, those holes heal up. And so people I don't think they're kind of, one of the things also that I've been really excited about recently is called a continuous glucose monitor. Matter of fact, I have one on. I don't know if I can show it to you, but it's it's really simple. This is not video, but I can show you anyway. But it's a little device that you wear on the back of your arm, and it can tell you your glucose numbers, your sugar numbers, continuously. I mean, you can do it with a finger prick, but it's not continuous. And the one thing people can't see is they can't see what it's doing to the inside of their body. They can't see that, a donut's going to spike it way up into the 200s is when it's supposed to be like 70 or 80. And so there's been a lot of advances in science and stuff, but yeah, I'm excited for the future. I think that the world changes when they have what they call non-invasive glucose monitors, where you can wear it like a Fitbit and just look at your watch and say, whoa, that donut that was not good. Right now, we can kind of rationalize it. We can say, well, one's not going to kill us, and one isn't going to kill you. One cigarette's not going to kill you. But over time, it's going to, the metabolic diseases, metabolic syndrome and the constellation of diseases around it. I mean, that inflammation is going to make some part of your body give in. And everybody's different, how it manifests. Some people it's arthritis, and some people it's lupus, and some people it's Hashimoto or whatever. I mean, everybody's got a little different thing, but it really, the inflammation caused by sugar. I mean, diabetes 2 is the perfect example. Perfect. Like, there wasn't that much diabetes 40, 50 years ago. There was some, but it wasn't the percentage that it is now, when I think 75% of Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic, okay? And they don't even know it. And there's a $1 billion corporation called Virta Health who has hundreds of peer-reviewed studies of people with an average of 8 years with diabetes 2 who have put it into remission simply because they changed their diet and eliminated sugar and flour. That's all they did. They didn't take any medications. They didn't do anything else. This company has really nothing to sell except, the coaching and the monitors, and so that they can show you how your glucose levels are, your sugar levels are, blood sugar levels are. And they, like I said, they have $1 billion valuation because they have, I think this by thousands by now, of people putting diabetes 2 into remission. And when that starts to happen and people start to realize that the only changes the success stories made was the change in their diet, then the world changes. Then people get this thing, and we come back off of that bad turn we took 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so important. And it's, I think, important for people to know that you can change things in your life and
Yeah,
you can be successful with that. And who wouldn't want to be able to feel better? I think that that's probably the biggest perk, is that mentally, I think you feel better when you
that's
don't
the
have
one.
all of that.
The one thing I forgot to mention is that, when you get to be our age, when you get to be an adult, by the time you're trying to quit sugar as an adult, you're not trying to get a buzz anymore. You're just trying to fight off the withdrawals, and you're just trying to not, you got a meeting, you got kids, you can't have a headache, you can't be lethargic, you can't be a little bit depressed, just can't do it. So you have a little bit of the old standby, and it gets you through to the next day. But then the next day shows up and you're in the same boat again.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point. Well, this has been so interesting. I'm so glad that you came on here. I think it's so important to educate people about this. So, if there are people who are sitting there thinking, okay, this is me, I need to get rid of this addiction, or I need help with this, how can people follow you or work with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I don't know if folks have heard of the brand new social media uh, thing, Clubhouse, but I'm on Clubhouse at Mike Collins. You can follow me there. But the main place is sugaraddiction.com. And we have a big book there, a yellow book that used to be on Amazon, was a bestseller on Amazon a couple of years ago. But we give it away free now. And it'll give you it'll give you all of the information kind of laid out better, the food plans, everything you need, kind of description of my story. It's free to download. It's called The Last Resort Sugar Detox. And the reason it is because, like I said earlier, most of our folks have tried 6 or 8 or 10 different diets, and we're kind of the last house on the block. So if they go to sugaraddiction.com, we also have a quiz there, but I always say, if folks took the time to listen to this and then to go to sugaraddiction.com, they don't need to take the quiz. Just get the book. And we have the Quit Sugar Summit twice a year now, January and September. And if you check it out, quitsugarsummit.com, leave your email address, then we'll notify you when the next one comes up. So we interview, you'll see the list. It's kind of staggering. We had Judy Collins, the famous singer, on last time. It was really cool. Yeah. She's 80 something years old, and she really wanted to, she has a great body of work, and her songs and everything, send in the clowns. I can't sing, but anyway, she wrote a book called Cravings, which is a good book, actually. It's kind of 12-step based, but it's still good. And she talks about her recovery from sugar addiction, and it's really cool. And plus we've got Dr. Lustig and Gary Taubes. We got a lot of people on there, so check out the Quit Sugar Summit. So those are where you find me online.
And I'll have the links to those things in the description and in the show notes to this podcast, so you can just click right on it. I think that's really probably a comforting thing to know, that people are not alone in this. That it's a very, very, very common addiction that nobody really talks about.
Yeah.
So I applaud you for bringing it to light and to the public, and trying to help people and make them aware, and just help them be healthier in general. Thank you for doing that. We need that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's I didn't sign up to be the anti-candy man, but now it's it hurts. And you've got kids, that kids can be cruel. They don't mean to be, but when a child is overweight, it's hard for them, and then it leads a bunch of physical stuff later in life too. So
Mhm.
yeah, we want to get the message out.
So, if you had any closing words of wisdom for the viewers out there, listeners out there, what would you tell them?
Well, an interesting thing happened over the years of doing this, and what I found is that when I did the research, when I did the surveys, the people that succeed are a little bit have a little bit of rebel in them. They're a little bit of a pioneer, right? If you go back to their home or back to their family of origin or their workplace, they first person to go to college, first person to get this sort of job, this kind of career, this kind of athletics. Um, and they were willing to join another tribe. They were willing to move away from their hometown. They were moving away from their family, well, not leaving their family, but they were willing to, go to law school or do whatever it was, change the dynamic of their family, kind of break away from that orbit a little bit and do their own research and then finally make a decision and join another crowd. And what we find is that is the secret sauce to what anything is to get a community, especially in sugar recovery, but to get a community that is, something that you believe in, something that you want to do. So that's what I would suggest folks do. Try and have the courage to be that rebel and to step out and join another crowd.
Perfect words of wisdom. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed myself.
And I want to thank all of you out there too for listening to us today. And please, if you enjoy this podcast, I ask that you subscribe, leave a positive review from wherever you're listening. And the greatest compliment you can pay me is a referral, just bringing other people to my podcast. So thank you for those of you who have done that. As always, if you want to follow me, I always go live on Facebook at 6:30 Central on Mondays where I do a free card reading. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I always post videos to Instagram. And I have free guided meditations on my YouTube channel. So check all of that out. And if you want to work with me, you can go to my website, melissaoatman.com. There you'll see all the services I offer. You can work with me one-on-one, or you can do past life regression or Reiki, whatever you feel guided to do. You can purchase everything from my website, and all of my sessions are done online through Zoom. I want to thank you guys so much again. I hope you have a beautiful day from wherever you're listening. As always, I am sending you so much love and light, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.